like our weather now, it's pretty nice when I enter work today.
Yeah.
But not when it's like between 1 to 4. That's when it gets, for me, scorching hot.
Yes, it is. I mean, like if you've been living under a rock, you've definitely been realizing that Malaysia specifically have been going through such of a heat spell, especially in the afternoon where it is so burning hot. It was scorching that you literally could get dizzy should you are like walking outside without having any shades above you. And it is kind of scary actually, because we have been hearing reports in the east coast of Malaysia that there have been children who unfortunately passed away due to heat waves. It is a scary thought to think about it.
Yes, it is a very, very scary thought. And the worst part is, ladies and gentlemen, now according to the Meteorological Department Deputy Director General Muhammad Hisham Anif, he said that the heat wave is likely to end by June as the high temperatures will gradually drop by then, but it will still be hotter than normal between June to September. So it is, I can see some people like shaking behind the camera or currently, you know, at home shaking their heads, thinking, how can we endure this heat? How can we still go about our normal activities but still protecting ourselves? So here on the show, we brought in an expert.
Exactly. We brought in a subject matter expert to discuss about this, to give us a bit of tips and tricks, also to clarify a few things. We have together with us here Dr. HILWANI KAHARUDDIN, emergency physician at Damansara Medical Centre. Good morning, Doc. How are you?
Good morning.
Well hydrated?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because that's the only thing that I could relate when it comes to heat. You always need to keep yourself hydrated.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, hydrate.
So, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
But is that the number one thing that we need to constantly do, is to hydrate? And when we talk about hydrate, what should we hydrate ourselves with? Because when I think about hydrate, I'm like, oh, coffee. Coffee is hydrating, but it is not good for the heat, because it's
not.
Ironically also very dehydrating,
That's
right?
True, yeah.
So what type of liquid or what type of sustenance should we hydrate our bodies with to ensure that we have the, you know, right amount of electrolytes, we're not dehydrated?
Sure.
Yeah, what kind of... This one very, very important to the audience.
Yeah, so first of all, before hydration, you want to avoid, first of all, being in the hot sun for long periods of time. That's, obvious. On purpose, yes. I think as much as you can, try to be in the shade. And when you're in the shade, you know, put the fan on. If you don't have air conditioning, air conditioning is fantastic. But otherwise, it's getting the fan on and ensuring good ventilation wherever you are. And obviously, appropriate clothing, thin material, cotton, breathable, light coloured and stuff like that, so that goes a long way. And but definitely hydration, yes. Yes, I think this coffee culture the last few years has really gotten into a big boom. And yes, I love coffee myself, but you're right, absolutely right, in that hydration is very important, number one, but it's also the type of fluids that you drink. And as I'm saying it fluids because it's not just water, because the thing is when it's hot, what happens is your body tries to regulate its own temperature, and we sweat a lot. And in the sweat, we're not just losing water, but we're losing a lot of electrolytes as well, as you say. So drinking lots and lots, not just water, but electrolyte-rich fluids such as sports drink, yes.
Isotonic drinks.
Isotonic drinks, yes.
Coconut water?
Yes, coconut water is very good. Juices in general have got lots of electrolytes in it. But yes, carbonated drinks, coffee, caffeinated drinks, alcohol are all diuretics. So they make us pee more than usual, so that's going to make the dehydration worse. So yeah, and lots of people are, you know, under the impression when it's hot, I need to drink ice cold water. It does. I mean, it's great. It's just quenching. I love ice cold water myself, but any drinks is enough because you really want to replace the fluid and the electrolytes.
We'll get more into that in regards of how can you take care of yourself, what kind of things that you can actually do. But before we even, you know, dive deeper into that, let's focus on what the heat wave actually, how can it affect you? Because like as what I've said actually earlier on the show, there have been cases, unfortunately, that children specifically they have passed away due to heat waves. So what are the common types of health risks that is actually associated with heat waves?
Okay, so I think when we talk about health-related illnesses, people tend to focus on heat exhaustion, stroke, you know, dehydration. And yes, those are serious conditions that are directly related to extreme hot weather. But I think most people forget or do not realize that chronic medical conditions also get worse when the weather is extremely hot. So for us to understand the effects it has, I think we need to first know how our body regulates itself first, just a little bit. So first of all, our body is able to auto-regulate ourselves to maintain a core body temperature of about 37 degrees kind of thing. And that's important because that's where we function at our best. So when the core body temperature goes very high, it tries to bring it down by two main mechanisms. And one is, number one, for the blood vessels to the skin to dilate and we release heat from our skin to the environment that way. And number two, as we have discussed earlier, is from sweating. So increased production of sweat and increased sweating. And as we learned in school, if you can remember that when, our sweat evaporates, that takes the heat off from our skin. How does this affect? So obviously when there's excessive sweating, when the weather is extremely hot and you're not replenishing the fluids or the sweat that we've lost through the sweat, then that leads to dehydration and that leads to exhaustion and heat cramps and stuff like that. But also people with chronic medical conditions, especially heart and lung diseases, find that they have symptoms more than usual during this time. And that's because when you're losing a lot of fluid from your sweat and you're not replacing it, so if you imagine your blood volume is low, your heart has to work doubly hard to pump, all this whatever remain to the rest of the body, right? So that stresses the heart. So people with underlying, it doesn't really cause heart conditions, but people with underlying heart conditions would find that they're more symptomatic. And heart diseases in Malaysia and all over the world is very, very high, very prevalent. And then on top of that, other things like chronic illnesses like lung diseases, asthma, chronic obstructive lung disease. You know that with very hot weather, we're talking about air pollution as well. So at the same time, haze, ozone production from the ground. So all that causes a chemical reaction, and they find that they are more symptomatic than usual. But of course, you have the dehydration, tiredness, and the extreme end of that is your heat stroke.
Yeah. Okay. I remember so this was like sometime second week of Raya. And I went back KK and I came back to KL and I didn't realize how hot KL actually was. I actually felt sick immediately. I got a fever. It started with a flu and then slowly became a fever and whatnot, right? So to our audiences who are currently at home, who are currently facing this heat fatigue, this heat wave, this migraines and whatnot, and they still have to go to work. They still have to. They cannot stop working.
They need to live their lives.
They need to still live their lives. What are some of the recommendations that you can suggest to our audiences? Maybe wear a hat, bring an umbrella, little things that will make big changes.
Yeah, and maybe for a guy who doesn't have hair, extra protection. All right, it's not about me.
Yes, so wearing appropriate clothing, like I said before, thin, breathable clothes, light-coloured clothes, putting on a hat, yes. If you have to be outdoors, try to take frequent breaks in the shade and make sure the fan is on. Again, air conditioning is very important, and just drinking lots of water. I think sometimes you have to make you have to make a point to drink because sometimes when you are busy focusing on your work or whatever task in front of you, you don't realize how dehydrated you get and how hot it gets. And so going out with a bottle that is there's 2 liters in there or something, that gives you a target to I have to finish this between whatever time. But definitely people who need to be in the outdoors at especially those hours of 11 to 4 when it's really, really hot, to take frequent breaks in the shade or in an air-conditioned space.
Yeah, because there are some individuals out there who do not really fancy drinking plain water as easy as it is. I mean, I got friends who really have trouble in drinking water. It's not just, they just don't like it because it's tasteless. So they want something, a bit sweet. They want to put some cordial into it or something that has some sort of a taste. So it is not encourageable at all, I believe, right, to drink those kind of drinks rather than water, because ultimately water is the best way to go.
Yeah, again, like we said before, it's not really just water that we're looking at. You want some electrolytes in there as well. So to me, at the end of the day, drink whatever you want to drink, but just bear in mind that things that have contain caffeine in it and alcohol and stuff like that do have a diuretic effect. But if you really can't stand water for whatever reason, so drinking is better than not drinking. But obviously there are different types. Again, sports drink, isotonic drinks are good. Having said that, on the shelves, sometimes some of the sports drink, they're very sweet as well. So yes, if you're diabetic, you want to know, to control that. So your options would be all the food and beverages you can, in the packaging, there's already listed how much calories, how much sugar is in it. So make your decision wisely, but yes, to drink whatever you want to drink.
Or can you even do like fruit-infused water
yes,
as well,
definitely,
right?
Yes.
Put in some lemon in there.
Very
lemon,
refreshing.
Watermelon even.
Yes. So fruits are rich in water anyway. So increasing your fruit intake will definitely help.
Right. Well, one thing I do want to ask you, Doc, is that when you talk about the heat wave, how it affects a certain person's health status at that moment in time, are there actually any long-lasting consequences after the fact? For instance, like if that person has been diagnosed, or should I say, has been, was really sick during the heat wave session, but after the heat wave, when everything is back to normal, cool down, could there be any long-lasting consequences?
Okay. So if we look in the literature, there's not much reports on that, simply because putting the cause down to exposure to extreme heat is a bit difficult when you've got so many confounding factors. So what we know now is basically from our follow-up of patients who had heat stroke, basically. And heat stroke is already the extreme end of the heat-related illnesses. And heat stroke has a very high mortality rate anyway, of 50% or more kind of thing. Yeah, unfortunately. So so for those who do survive the heat stroke, we do find that they are permanent injury, yes, to various extents, depending on your initial health status to begin with, injuries to the kidneys and stuff like that. And what we do find as well is that people who were previously independent, able to look after themselves and whatnot, tend to require a bit more care and help with their daily activities. So it does have an effect, on a long-term effect, but to specify exactly what it is, because it affects all organs in your body. So it's a bit difficult to pinpoint, that's number one. And number two, like I said, we know it causes more worsening of your chronic illnesses, because we see visits to the emergency room is higher during, extremely hot weather. But at the same time, to put it down exactly that this is a long-term effect of extreme weather is very difficult because of so many confounding factors.
That's actually very, very interesting. I'm actually curious, in your own experience, have you, especially in the recent months, have had any patients who have come to the emergency ward, came to you and was just like, I'm dying from the heat. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with the heat. I'm literally dying from the heat. Can you share with our audiences maybe your experience dealing with this?
So maybe not so much in our emergency department. I think people are, even driving to work every day, I hear public service announcement reminding people to drink and, to keep hydrated and to remain in the shade. So not so much of that in day-to-day life, but I have been on medical standbys for sports events, and when it's scorching hot, and we do see people just, because again of the competitiveness in them, they want to finish that race for by hook or by crook. So yeah, we do see a lot of heat exhaustion cramps to the point of people becoming confused, and one or two heat strokes. Yes, usually in competitive sports on a day-to-day. My own practice, thankfully I have not seen yet, but we have seen the reports, as you say, up to 6, I think, reports so far of various heat-related illnesses, and 3 were initially put down to heat stroke, but I think they've revised the cause of death, or 2 of that, and the 1 remains still. So
And sorry, go ahead.
Because speaking of which, because you mentioned something about sports, right? I'm competing in, I think, the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
And it's usually a weekend tournament. So that means that I'm facing the sun from day up until night, right? And even at times at night, I don't know about you, but I still feel the heat. I still feel like, so should our audiences still keep hydrated despite, it being nighttime?
Yes. Because even nighttime, although it's not as scorching as during the day, the temperatures have been higher. So yes, drinking, number one, having access to water. Sometimes you are too tired to go down, let's say. So just having that bottle of drink whatever you want by the bedside makes a lot of difference, so you don't have to go down and get it from the fridge. And yes, whatchamacallit, again, ventilation and fan and air conditioning and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's
Make
not
sure
just
you bring a little fan all around, right?
Yeah, you know those cutie Hello Kitty fans, you know.
And showering many times a day.
Yeah.
I was about to ask that. Would you recommend to our audiences to shower as frequently? Maybe they don't take a full shower, but like in Malay they call it mandi basah. You know, just wet yourself.
Aren't you when you take a shower you get basah?
Yeah. yes, you do.
Mandi kering.
Yeah, mandi kering, mandi. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I used to call it mandi basah. Like you just mandi mandi kerbau. That's what I said.
Yeah.
So would you recommend to our audience to do that?
I definitely would. Yes, even if it's not a full shower with everything, yes, just to wet yourself or even use a spray, you know, whatever's convenient. Obviously, if you're not at home, you know, taking frequent showers may be a problem, but using the spray to cool yourself down, because again, as those water droplets evaporate, it takes the heat off. And I think that's the you know, the fans with the droplets in it. So I think that's the rationale behind that. Only sometimes when it's really hot, even the mist is hot on your skin. But it does help.
Okay, I do want to ask you something. It may be a bit controversial, but I just want to get your opinion on this. Granted that this is not the first time we're experiencing this. We have been experiencing this for years already. I mean, I remember back in 1998 even, it was like, there were even cases where Chuping in Perlis recorded a high temperature of 41 degrees Celsius at that moment in time. So this is not something new, but yet again, it has always been like, wow, it is so hot. Why didn't I know about it? It's like people forget somehow. Well, what's your opinion on that? Do we need to get reminded every single time, or how is it?
I think it's good, and I think we are already doing that, because like I said, driving to work every day, I hear all these public service announcements about, you know, people reminding people to drink and whatnot. So it is good, because again, we like to complain about things. We don't really, you know. And we just get along with life anyway. You know, you do what you need to do, kind of thing. So yes, it's good, a reminder. But on top of that, I think it's important for people to understand, not just for you, to look out for each other as well. You may have an elderly neighbor next door who's, you know, living alone. They don't have their children with them. And so for us to understand the effects of the hot weather on our body system is the same for other people as well, and look after each other. Yeah.
I'm actually curious, for our audiences who are at home, maybe you have, let's say we'll put the most extreme situation where I have a friend who passed out from the heat stroke. And I obviously don't have any medical background. I'm not entirely sure what to do. What can I do for a person who is currently suffering from a heat stroke or a possible migraine or heat fatigue? So what do I offer? Water? Do I have to get ice? What's the solution here?
Okay. So the first thing is you want to make sure that they are in a comfortable environment, that there's no danger that can impose to them. So make sure, bring them into the shade. If they've passed out, they're lying down, just let them lie down. I know I have what I call a very strong vagal response, and there was once I passed out, kind of blacked out in a petrol station, and Malaysians are very helpful. They tried to lift me up, and the moment they tried to lift me up, I could feel the blood draining from my brain, you know, that way. So I was like, oh, okay, don't do that. So you bring them into the shade. Yes, you try to cool them. Put the fan on, sprinkle some water on them. When they're conscious enough, yes, then give them a drink, that kind of thing. But you just want to make sure that there's nothing more serious, like if they're having seizures or whatever. You know, that's when you want to call emergency services 999 and just stay with them.
Okay, lovely. That's a lot that you could actually learn from our guest over here. So make sure, to all Malaysians out there, as what she has mentioned, you know, go out there, go climb a tree and get a coconut, and drink the coconut water. You know, one of the ways that you can keep yourself hydrated. But
or you can just buy a coconut.
Go buy one. Or
yes, they're in cans now.
Exactly, they are. So thank you so much to our lovely guest, Dr. HILWANI KAHARUDDin, emergency physician at DAMANSARA Medical Center, for being with us in sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.